Hello, my name is Randall Borden. I'm an attorney in Virginia and Maryland, and I'm happy to bring on tonight Mr. Brandon R. Sloane. He is an attorney I believe, practices in Virginia, but he's also licensed in Washington, D.C. and New York. He is a former prosecutor who became a defense attorney and does litigation on criminal defense matters, everything from DWI to serious felonies. He went to Georgetown University undergraduate, and UVA Law School, like I did. So, well, welcome aboard and wahoo. So, I understand that you've set up your own law firm now in 2024. Is that right?
Correct. So I was a prosecutor from 2011 to 2022, basically.
Uh-huh.
And in 22, I went into private practice. I joined a small firm in Arlington, Virginia, that was called Dennis Stewart and Krischer. We never
Mhm.
changed the name, but I was essentially the fourth partner there. And
Okay.
then for 2 years, we all worked together. And then last February or so, me and my partner Andrew Stewart, the Stewart in DSK, we sort of all went our separate ways. So they became Dennis Krischer and we became Sloane Stewart. And we've been doing that since February of last year.
Okay. And where's your office? You said in Arlington. What's the address on that?
We actually just moved offices. So we are just behind Fairfax Courthouse. So we're at, I think, 10486 Armstrong Street, just
Oh,
across from Fairfax City Hall. And our website, sloanstewartlaw.com.
I'm the other side of the hill behind the courthouse.
Oh,
So very close neighbors here.
yeah.
Okay. When you, I guess, graduated from law school and then went on to join the prosecutor's office and then I've read your bio, of course, and did quite a lot of prosecution work. And then up in New York, I guess New York State. And then you decided to switch over into criminal defense. What made you want to switch over?
Well, so it's a long-winded story, but I'll try and keep it
Okay, go
brief.
ahead.
So I graduated law school in 2011,
Hmm.
which timing-wise doesn't immediately jump out, but I started law school in 2008. So in
Okay.
August 2008, everyone who remembers sort of what was going on when
Hmm.
we all paid deposits and went to law school and went to UVA, you figure, oh, I just need to graduate and they're going to throw these big, fancy, expensive New York and Washington, D.C.
That's right.
law firm
Absolutely.
jobs at me.
Uh,
And then by September of our first year of law school, the world had imploded with
mhm.
Lehman Brothers and all that stuff. So that drastically changed sort of the first year hiring that's normal for UVA with all the on-campus interview and all this stuff.
Hmm.
So for a lot of us, and it wasn't just me, I mean, a lot of us who went to Georgetown, UVA, these sort of elite schools
Right.
had to
Hmm.
pivot. My first year after law school, I worked as a judicial sort of intern back in New York, which is where I was originally from. You wouldn't know from my resume,
Uh,
but up until Georgetown, I grew up in New York. Went back there for the summer, came back, still with these hiring issues. What really did it for me was during my third year of law school at UVA. One of the great things that's still great about really good law schools was the clinical offering. So in my third year of
okay.
law school, with my third year practice certificate, so I was able to actually be in court. We had what was called a prosecution clinic. My third year of law school, me and it was about 30 or 40 of us, and we were
Hmm.
all placed, one or two at most of us, in prosecutors' offices. So Charlottesville, Albemarle, I was up in Culpeper, and I strategically picked Culpeper, and here was why. At that time, me and my now wife, she lived up in Alexandria.
So
So
halfway.
so it was halfway because I
Right, right.
knew on Monday mornings I might need to be in Culpeper at 9 o'clock. And so it
Wow.
kind of worked out well. And I went up there 2 days a week and we would do basically the general district court docket in Virginia, which
Mhm.
is traffic, misdemeanors, shoplifting, assaults, low level type stuff. Those prosecutors would just hand me the docket. Me and my
Mhm.
partner, they would go, here's what we got today. We'll sit over here. And they would just kind of yuck it up with local attorneys
Right.
and we would handle the cases, talk to the police, talk to the witnesses. When you did that for a year, you'd be surprised at how easy it is to get interviews in prosecutors'
Mhm.
offices. So now I have no job offers. I have no real prospects despite having gone to UVA. The world's sort of still a mess.
Right.
And I got every prosecutor job I interviewed for, I was asked to come back because I had this really great experience. It wasn't
Mhm.
just, hey, I'm in an intern reviewing things. Like I
Right.
was
I
actually
studied
doing
it in the law
trial.
school.
You're right.
Yeah.
It ended up there. I was originally from New York, so my first job was in the Nassau County District Attorney's Office, which is up in Long Island. And as you know, Nassau County is basically the Fairfax of New York City, right?
Right.
About 1.5 million people, fairly affluent. That was my first job out of law school. And
Mhm.
I always equated that. I joked, we were 30 first year attorneys, literally in an office. We were in the floor of a courthouse.
All right.
We weren't even in the main courthouse because the way it's set up is about 5 miles away is big boy court.
Okay.
That was where 100 other serious felony prosecutors were.
Mhm.
We were down in district court about 5 miles away, just 30 of us. I always joked, I was like, it was like a legal frat house. There were at least 3 weddings out of there. I think as many divorces at this point. And we were all like 25, 26. We'd go to work, we'd go out and drink, we'd come back and work. And these were all fairly low level cases. But
Mhm.
that was where I learned to try cases because
Right.
you do a 2 week misdemeanor DWI jury trial because that's sort of how it's set up there.
Mhm.
And you're going to learn how to do jury selection, openings, closings,
Right.
cross openings. And so I was there for 3 years. Me and my wife always wanted to come back to Virginia. So in 2014, we started kind of looking again. I had a 3 year commitment at that DA's office, which was sort of
Mhm.
unique and interesting. They did it so that way they wouldn't have to do turnover and hiring. They wanted you
Right.
to make a 3 year commitment. And as my 3 years were coming up, we wanted to move back. Problem was, I couldn't waive in. So I took the bar exam in
That's
February of
Virginia.
14 down in Norfolk,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
which was much easier than the first New York bar exam. I kind of was studying along the way, and then I holed up at the Sheridan right across, like the Sheridan waterside, right down there in Norfolk. And
All
the
right. Mhm.
exam in February is in the Marriott right around the corner. We went to a wedding in Baltimore on like Saturday night. I took the car, drove down to Norfolk, and basically stayed down there until Tuesday or Wednesday. Holed up in a hotel room, cramming Virginia law. Took the test over 2 days. I walked out. I kind of knew I had passed. And then just applied to jobs. And then serendipitously, a friend of a friend told me about the job in Fairfax, which was like kind of the dream job if you wanted to be a prosecutor in Virginia.
All
Biggest
right.
jurisdiction in the Commonwealth, most sort of prestigious. They were doing the best work. They had the best, biggest cases. I interviewed down there, and it was like a no-brainer insofar as, oh, you're a New York prosecutor with 3 years of experience, and you want to come here? I said, of course
Mhm.
I want to come. And the rest is sort of history. So I was there for 6 years, 2019, elections and shakeups and all of that.
Mhm.
I ended up in Arlington for 2 years. Then something interesting happened around 2022. This was a plan I didn't know I had, which was to get public service loan forgiveness because UVA is not cheap.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember when you were there, like the benefit of being in state is a $5,000 discount off of
No.
$60,000.
When I went there, it was cheap.
Yeah, it is not cheap anymore.
Right.
And so I got to a point as I was doing the prosecution work where you get to a point where the quickest way out is through, right?
Mhm.
Because once you get 3, 4, 5 years in, you need 10 years. And you're going, okay, by 7, 8, 9 years, you're going, I'm finishing this thing because you've got this $200,000, $300,000 worth of loan debt. Once that came through, which was, roughly at the beginning of 2022, I
Mhm.
was sort of having the itch. And this is sort of, I think, true of anybody who does law in any capacity, which is if you're not changing, if you're not growing, and if you're not challenging yourself,
Right.
at some point you're going to be sort of stale. So I had done everything I wanted to do as a prosecutor. I had tried and won murder cases. I had worked on policy. I had been and done everything I thought I wanted to do and things I didn't even ever think I would do. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to be more in control over my time, my sort of interests,
And
and
you have a
ultimately
son
my
too,
career.
right?
So I
So
have
can
three
you?
kids.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
I have an 8-year-old who's going to be 9, and I have two 4-year-old now twins. At the time I left, they were 6 and the twins were 1. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just time for me to try something new. And everyone had
Right.
always told me, you're going to be a great defense attorney. And I would sort of poo-poo it. I would go like that. I'm not interested in it. This is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing. Like I have no business sense. I don't know how to run a business. I don't want to know how to run a business. As that itch came, I found I was really interested in it and figuring out ways to scale and do things better or different. And so our firm now has become really, I don't think we're unique, but I
Mm-hmm.
think we're more typical of 2025 law firms, sort of
Mhm.
that. I mean, what am I? I'm a geriatric millennial. I think that's what they call me. We're generally paperless. My firm runs on an iPad and a laptop. As long as I have those two things, we were in London in November with the family and the kids, and I was able to do work as if I was anywhere. That's the firm we run, which is part and parcel of the fact that I'm adamant, and so is my partner, that like we're doing it differently than like the legacy firm model. I go to court and my clients think we're a bunch of boobs until we start talking to them,
Mhm.
because our files are literally 3 pieces of paper.
All right.
Because I go, and then I pull everything up on my laptop and they go, "Oh, you have everything?" I go, "Yes, I have your entire file. Don't worry."
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's been the path. I mean, it's wild. It's been no fun ride. I'm probably a much better defense attorney by virtue of having been a prosecutor in my experience. I think it's hard to do it the other way around. There are a lot of defense attorneys who want to be prosecutors now, and I think they don't. It's a lot
Oh,
easier to learn how to tear apart a case that you've
right.
already learned how to build up than it is to spend a career tearing them down, and then all of a sudden one day you're going, "Oh, I have to get the witnesses here."
Right. Right. Mhm. And I was going to say that being self-employed, you have more time with your family. You can take off, and again, being virtual or being totally on the cloud, I guess you
Yeah.
can do it. So,
You're looking here. This is sort of the bat cave, as I call it. This is my, in my house. I generally, I take at least one, sometimes all three kids either to school or pick them up every day. We do the bedtime stuff. We set this call around that. And then I usually am down here. I got everything I need down here, and I'm usually
mhm.
down here until 8, 11, or 12. And it's not that I'm working less hours, but I have more control over them. So it's not
Right.
unusual with like prospective clients. I'll meet you where you are. And so what I
Mm.
find is when they call and I go, "Hey, easiest time for us to have a good long chat about your case. Are you free at 8:30 or 9 o'clock?" And they go, "Yeah, that would be perfect." And I go,
Mhm.
"Fantastic." And I'll sit down here and, talk to them for an hour and we'll
Right.
go through whatever it is. But that's the easiest time for me to do those things. Is it less hours than the prosecutor's office? No, but it's different hours. It's
All right.
just more manageable for me. I mean, criminal defense work is 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. So it's not unusual for me to have to step away on a Saturday or a Sunday, take this call or that call. The upshot of it is I make up the time with family stuff elsewhere because the
Right.
only person
Right.
I'm accountable to is myself and the client.
And if there's an event or something at school, you can schedule it out and shift your calendar around. Oh yeah. Oh, I
Oh, my
did
wife
that.
looks at my wife has my entire calendar and she'll go, "Hey, I saw you're free. It would be great if they're doing this at school." And I go, "Perfect.
Mhm.
I'll keep it clear." Stuff
Yep.
like that. I coach the oldest basketball team, which I never really even played basketball. I know it. I know how to play it,
Yeah.
but like somebody had to do it, and it's one of those things where, hey, it's fun. It's time that's just the two of us. You make that stuff happen.
Mhm.
And here's the thing too. I learned a lot of that from my own dad. He was a personal injury lawyer in Brooklyn for
Oh,
30 years.
okay. Mhm.
So I sort of grew up that way, but we run very different practices. The idea of being a lawyer in New York in the 70s, 80s, 90s was you got on the train, you went into Brooklyn, you did your work, and
Right.
you come home. It wasn't cloud. I never saw my dad work at 8 at night in this upstairs. One thing he joked about though was that's why he started coaching Little League. And for me, because he goes, it's the only way I'll be able to actually do it. Because
Mhm.
otherwise, like if I don't have it on the calendar, I can't do it. And if you tell a judge it's 5 o'clock and the judge wants to keep going, and you go,
Right.
Judge, I got my kid's little league game. I don't want to be late. You
Uh,
tell the judge you're the coach, Mr.
oh.
Sloane, no problem. We'll stop a little bit early. I don't want you to miss it. You make the train. That he goes, it was always the perfect foil. And I've
Oh.
sort of learned that too. I mean, I had a case last summer where the same thing came up, and it was the judge wanted to run till 5:30 in the middle of a murder trial. And I was like, "Judge, I hate to do this, but I really need to be out of here by the 5 o'clock time." Like,
Mhm.
and she goes, and I was like, "My daughter's basketball. I got to get over there and coach." She goes, "No problem. We'll stop at 5."
One of the advantages of being self-employed, the other advantage is something like COVID hits and does my phone still work?
Right.
But
I was fortunate. I missed COVID, but I was in the prosecutor's office during COVID in
hmm,
Arlington. And I can tell you, writ large, it was an interesting time. One, particularly government. And I think this was true across the board for any government agencies. Everybody who was saying, we need to be more nimble. We need to be
Mhm.
more
Mhm.
cloud-based. And it was always in a budget. And I learned this as I was watching it happen. It was always in a budget 2 years from now.
All
We're
right.
working on it. We're working on it. And
Oh
then COVID happened, and everyone said, we needed this yesterday. And so the capability spun up
yeah.
overnight. I was a supervisor, so that changed it a bit. But I was generally in the office 4 days a week during
Hmm.
COVID because we had no choice. I mean, the criminal justice system doesn't stop during COVID. It slowed
Right.
down, but all of us, I think, took seriously this idea. Like, we were still having people getting arrested. We had people in jail. And even as a prosecutor, you think, well, what do you care if people are in jail? I mean, that was just not how we operated. I would say 60 to 75% of our office was in almost every day in
Hmm.
2020 and 2021, just because the work demanded it and we weren't equipped to do anything else. Now, my firm, in hindsight, was much different. I mean, they were
Right.
on, PPP loans, and those guys had a really difficult time just sort of getting through. And so you kind of had to make up different things. One of my partners, sort of, Andrew, who does a lot of federal work, he was doing a lot of sort of the federal work that was coming out where they were kind of trying to do compassionate releases and these things. And he was like, listen, if they're calling to throw that work out here and that's where the work is, then that's what I'm going to
Right.
do. And so that's, as you know, with your own firm, half of it is being flexible and being able to adjust. If the winds
Mhm.
change, you better figure out how to sort of go with that current.
Right.
Otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah, that was my experience too. I basically just stopped going to the office and just demanded everything be virtual. I was practicing a lot of bankruptcy back then, and all of that went 100% virtual.
Yep.
And I remember the stumbling of trying to the judges trying to get the systems to work,
Right.
but that was and now it's just second nature to everybody.
I think DC Superior Court still is doing virtual appearances
Uh,
on DWIs and whatever. I was sitting on a DC Superior Court appearance. So
hmm,
you're in like the room. It was like a traffic or something. I think it was like a driving on suspended, some pro se defendant.
hmm.
And he calls in. You hear in the background, 500 feet, make a left. And he goes, sir, are you driving? No, I'm not. He's like, turn that off. He's like, I'm not driving. You just hear silence, and he goes, make a left at the light. And he's like, sir, sir, I am continuing your case. It was just like one of those where you're like, you can't make this stuff up.
So what do you think is going to be the future? I mean, we practice in Fairfax. We having to go in for Friday motions dockets and 10, 15 minutes and then you leave. Is it going to be mandatory virtual unless you get the judge's permission to go in? I mean, how do you think that's going to evolve?
One thing that's been nice is the further I get out of Fairfax, right? So for instance, I was involved in a civil case in another neighboring jurisdiction. I think that's, one of my early encounters with it. It was, okay, we need to set a trial date a year and a half from now. It was all done over the phone. No one needed to
Hmm.
go in. And so the courts that have realized efficiency on
Right.
these types of things are, particularly the volume courthouses. That's the type of stuff which is going to, I think, increase. The second part of that is going to be things. AI is still really early, but there are a lot of really good use cases for it. And now we're all, I think the lawyers, law firms, and sort of government agencies that figure out how to leverage that for
Hmm.
efficiency gains,
Right.
those are going to be where you see your kind of leaders, whether it's in government work or in legal work. The people who figure out how to leverage some of that to make their jobs better or easier are going to be some of the next steps. And you may see that come up in the context of scheduling things and routine appearances and
Hmm.
those sorts of things. I mean, I venture to guess 50 to 60% of any legal field, bankruptcy,
Hmm.
PI, divorce, custody. I mean, most of this stuff is form stuff.
And massive amounts of paperwork, which is
Right.
what AI specializes in
Right.
analyzing it. Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, and so when you talk, like for instance, Fairfax Circuit Court for the first time is kind of getting online. You couldn't even look up a court date
Hmm. Hmm.
before 6 months ago. And
Right.
now that stuff is there. those are the things that, are going to start making things easier. My hope also, and this is sort of maybe just the nature of the way I run my practice and the way I see the world, I hope things get less formal. COVID kind of brought that along a little bit,
Mhm.
but to the extent that, listen, if I have no formal court trial, and if I want to sit in my house without a tie on and a jacket to do virtual appearances, I hope we get to this point. And here's part of the reason why I also hope that. Access to justice, to the courts. You got to meet people where they are. We've sort of come a little bit further in that in the last few years. Like, for instance, I think that's why DC Superior Court is still doing virtual appearances, even on regular criminal cases. You
Mhm.
can enter a plea over Zoom
Yeah.
because the bottom line is if people don't have reliable transportation, but they have a phone, I mean, do we really need to be sticklers about the formality of entering your plea to a misdemeanor and here's where you go, here's where you pay your fine, email this
Mhm.
intake office and set up your appointment? And the same is true of a lot of these things. I mean, like a lot of offices and courthouses are better than others. So, like, Fairfax Juvenile and Domestic Relations. They have an intake office. Not every office, not every courthouse
Mhm.
does. And in the intake office, you can get custody orders and spousal support and child support stuff done without attorneys. But
Mhm.
that's because we're the largest county in the Commonwealth. Those are the types of things that I hope to see more of. No one should need to pay me to do some of the stuff that is out there. I think about
Right.
expungements. We get a lot of
Mhm.
people who need expungements. And I always tell them, listen, here's where the information is. Here's how you can do it. If you're more
Yeah.
comfortable having us do it, I'm happy to do it. But
Mhm.
that is a process that you can do yourself, but we also make you do 8 pieces of forms and get certified copies to
Right.
a certified copy from another floor in the courthouse to show that your charge was in fact dismissed on the second floor and now you're on the fourth floor. Like those are the
Uh,
types of things where I'm like, there's got to be a better and easier way to do it.
right.
But those are the things I hope get better.
And it's like a lot of divorces. It's like I listen to them. I say, you can do this yourself. Go to the courthouse. They'll hand you a stack of forms. If you have any questions, give me a call. Name change, scheduling conference. All right, you want to go there? You want to say, I want a trial. I want to build particulars, and then take the form and walk out of the courtroom,
Right.
and then call me.
Right. So those are the things I hope get better. And some of that are things that AI can help with,
All
where
right.
you can make it where these things are more accessible to people, where there are things that people need lawyers for. There are a ton of things people don't need lawyers for.
Help me organize a trial notebook. Help me write a answer and grounds of defense.
Yeah.
And then you feed it in and evaluates it and hopefully comes up with some halfway decent defenses.
Right.
But yeah, it's really getting amazing. But what do you think about though the judges want people in court so they can gauge their bearing and carriage and get a read on them or something?
So this was interesting. When COVID happened, that became a big thing.
Mm,
Civil very quickly went virtual. Criminal always had this different vibe. And early on was the idea that judges were saying, well, we need to be in person because the defendant has a constitutional right to confront a witness, and it's really up to them. And so a lot of defense attorneys were kind of playing the game at the time of, well, Judge, I mean, if they're not ready to go forward and they can't get their witness here, I mean, we would be objecting to them appearing virtual and see everything. And is there some truth to that? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I've done,
mm,
short of really bad technological connections, which is for the most part, I have found that somebody in a well-lit room on Zoom is enough. But
mm.
I get the concern. I think
All right.
judges want people there. This gets to a bigger issue, just writ large, that, if you're around different places, especially if you've practiced in different places. Case in point, I joked earlier about doing a 2-week misdemeanor jury trial in New York. Now, part of the reason why a jury trial for a misdemeanor DWI, which we could do in probably a day and a half at most in Virginia, would
Mm,
sometimes take at least a week, sometimes a week and a half in New York. Had a lot to do with things like unions. So the court
mm.
officers union needed to take a break from 1 to 2 every day.
Oh,
And they needed to be done. They were off the clock at 4 or 4:30 every day. You would start a trial And you wouldn't actually even start testimony on a given day until 11 or 11:30, depending on when the real docket for that day ended.
All
You'd
right.
start at 11:30 and you'd get an hour and a half of testimony, come back after lunch, get another 2 hours, 2.5 hours in. It is a harsh reality of sort of everything, which is there is a giant business that is a part of the justice system. We've
Hmm.
got clerks, we've got all of these folks. There is a vested interest in these things taking as long as possible and being as specialized as possible. That I think is part and parcel of why, the judges insist on the formality of it,
Hmm.
because there are a lot of jobs behind the formality of it. I don't know that that necessarily makes it the result any better or the
Hmm.
process any better, but I think that that is just a reality in courthouses across the country.
I mean, I've had witnesses in Africa. I was in Malaysia and had attended a hearing in Prince William County. It was fine.
Right.
Made my objections, whatever. And especially things like scheduling conferences or term day, having to, they'll dress up, go there, wait in a large room full of 20, 30 other people, wait for your name to be called, speak for 30 seconds and leave, and then get the piece of paper on the way out of the door. I
I
mean, at
make a
least
point.
Fairfax has that online system, but yeah.
Yeah, I make a point of being informal when I'm not in court. And by that I mean people will remark to me, "Oh, casual Tuesday?" Because I walk over to the court if I have to file stuff and I'm in jeans and a button down and I'm like, "No, I just don't have court today." Like,
Right.
I don't need to wear a suit to come in this place. That
Hmm.
is the problem.
Yep. Yep.
If I can't be comfortable to just come and drop off 5 pieces of paper, then it's no wonder people don't want to come here.
You talk about the efficiency. I mean, the access to justice would be a lot more stronger if you could have everything you billed for was extremely significant and
Yeah.
not sitting in a courtroom or whatever. So that's been kind of my frustration. But yeah, I try to go as virtual as possible, meet with the clients virtually. They appreciate it. They don't want to come to my office. Just hop on the phone, hop on the on a computer, 5, 10 minutes. Sometimes that's all it takes. And then you say, oh yeah, we needed to know that information. Okay, thank you. Now
Yep.
we're good. Your husband accused you of thus and such. Oh, no, no. Here's the facts. All right, thanks.
No, and I think that, that comes with the sort of meeting people where they are. I think
Hmm.
there are small subsets of potential clients who
All right.
want big mahogany desks or fancy like
Oh,
lobby.
yeah.
There
They
are a lot of
appreciate it,
them,
but
right? There
who
there
pays
are
for it?
plenty of them who are happy to get reasonably priced services at really good quality when they
Hmm.
realize that, oh, you're not cheaper because you're not as good. You're cheaper because I meet you at the courthouse and you text me back at 11:30 because you're spending your money on phone lines and not a fancy office. That is how, things should be.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
We pride
Who?
ourselves on that and
Mhm.
we're available. I mean, that to me is the biggest thing is we use all of this informality just to meet clients where they are.
And then, so what's coming? What's next?
For us, it's we've been having those conversations just sort of internally, me and Andrew, about kind of where we see things going. Because year one, as we joke, we're like, we started this firm on the back of a napkin, which isn't totally true,
Hmm.
but we're really proud of the work we did. We won a number of significant cases, got really good outcomes for clients. And now we're sort of trying to figure out what those next steps are. And frankly, a lot of it is being cautious. It's like John Wooden always said, be quick, but don't hurry. And I think that's sort
Hmm.
of how we're approaching growth, which is the more we know, right? The better we are at kind of get positioning ourselves to pivot and adjust on a dime. A lot of people I've seen are struggling with the adjustment to some of the changing, how do I put this? Caseloads is, I guess, a way of putting it. I mean, the bottom line is post George Floyd, criminal justice just looks differently. And there's a ton of reasons for that. Part of it, as it's reflected in like the law practice, is you look around certain courthouses, the number of DWI cases, which are kind of like criminal defense bread and butter, are down.
Hmm.
The number of traffic tickets, reckless drivings in Virginia are a big thing. Those are misdemeanors. Those numbers are down. And
Hmm.
so how do you adjust? And so that's sort of how we've been thinking of things is, well, what are things we can be doing? How do we make sure we're always at least positioned where we want to be,
All right.
right, in terms of work? And so a lot of our work is still court appointed. for two reasons. One, we believe in it.
Mm,
We honestly believe in the value of it. And two, it's also the best way to be prepared. One thing that we're really good at and known for is we don't distinguish between court appointed and retained clients. I
mm.
think that shows in the work. The plus of that is our retained clients, so to speak, are really getting us at the top of our game almost all the time. So the issues we see in court appointed practice bleed over to retained work. There are very few things we haven't seen before, written before, argued before. The question becomes when you do court appointed work, as much as, would you rather do $20,000 cases or one $20,000 case?
All right.
And we're
Well,
trying to just figure out how to get that balance where we're not killing ourselves with volume just for volume's sake, but there's a good balance between volume for work's sake, but also really allows us to drill down on some of those clients who really, really need the best of what we can do. And I think that's really where our focus is in year two, is figuring out how to do that even better.
having the nice regular cash flow is
That's
also because the
yeah.
economy is not always going to be there for you.
Well, and it's interesting because there are a lot of attorneys who, kind of turn their nose up at court appointed work and
Mm,
things like that. And I kind of don't understand it. And the reason why is because I won two murder trials last year. There were two acquittals literally back to back. It was
mm.
not on the bingo card of things that I set out to do in the first year of our firm.
All right.
That being said, those were both court appointed cases. If you want to learn how to do that kind of work, you want to learn how to do serious criminal work, serious felony work, you're not going to get it if you turn your nose up at helping and stepping in on those cases. The old joke is our retained clients are paying us to avoid trial. Court appointed clients generally are dealing with things where, for any variety of reasons, if you're serious about being a criminal defense attorney as
Mm.
opposed to a criminal defense person,
Negotiator.
right? It's the only way I
Yeah.
can put it.
Mm.
You need to dig in on these cases. We literally last year tried four murder cases in our firm. My partner tried two of them. I tried two of them, and all of them were court appointed cases.
Mm.
And the bottom line is when you're going to be in an area like ours in Northern Virginia, the amount of retained murder cases that are out there and available are few and far between. And the fact is I love that work. I love complicated, complex work. I've found
Mm.
I'm uniquely kind of built for it. There's an interesting thing that comes with it. When you've seen some of the things I've seen over, the course of almost 15 years in criminal law, you compartmentalize pretty well. As soon as I walk through the front door, like there is it's like a trap door being shut
All right.
because there's some of the stuff I see and deal with. Like the only way to get through the day is to have a partner like mine where anything that can be said is, and the stuff we see, we get through it together. I mean, there's definitely, vicarious
Right.
trauma, but we also compartmentalize it. But not everybody's built for that. There are a lot of people who are very happy doing traffic or DWI, and like more power to them if they're able to really do it. That being said, to go back to where we started this conversation, I went to Georgetown, I went to UVA Law. I have firmly believed for most of my career, I owe. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I owe, right?
Mm.
Like the opportunities I've had, the career I've been able to build is predicated on the fact that I've had opportunities and chances that just aren't available to everyone. Part of that is when a judge calls you and asks you to take an appeal that you're 100% going to lose money on. You
Yeah.
do it. I have a number of SVP cases right now, sexually violent predators, civil
Mm.
commitment stuff. They are not the most fun cases. They're, arguably the worst of the worst. They need a lawyer. And I will lose money on those cases. But part of the oath is, hey, everyone gets a lawyer. If they, in these
Mm.
cases, everyone gets a lawyer, and that is a calling to do. And you got to pay, to me, you have to pay some of that stuff back,
Mm.
even irregardless of the bottom line. And, you hope that if you're doing everything right, if you're doing things the right way, it comes back around, but you don't
Mm.
know for
Mm.
sure. And if it doesn't, well, so be it.
You got like a lot of experience doing murder trials. So,
Listen, this is a reality of anybody who does this work, which is
mm,
I generally like almost all of my murder clients more than, my low level,
oh,
traffic clients.
mm,
Here's the thing. It's very easy to pigeonhole people based on a charge, or if you're going to be in criminal defense, no one is the worst thing they've ever done. And that was
mm,
true as a prosecutor too. I firmly believed that like the job is sort of in criminal law, whether you're prosecutor or defense, there are bad people who do bad things.
mm,
And that is a fairly small group of the people who commit criminal offenses. What you have a lot more of are good people who do bad things, good people who do dumb things. And so part of the
yeah,
job of a prosecutor really is sort of, at least on some level, parsing out is somebody who's charged with malicious wounding. Is felony assault, usually like with a
mm,
weapon. That's punishable by 5 to 20 years. Is that person actually a felon, a
mm,
violent felon? Or is there something else going on? And it could be any number of reasons. Got in a fight at a parking lot coming out of a bar. Turns out he had just lost his job. Like, is that guy a
mm,
bad, violent person, or did we just catch them on their worst day? Same thing on the defense side is when you operate from the premise that no one is the sum total of the worst thing they've ever done. It's how you can sit in a room with somebody who unquestionably has killed somebody
mm,
and still treat them like a human and still figure out a way to argue and advocate for them. Our system like depends on that, and it depends on people stepping up and doing that. I think about the two murder cases that I tried over this past in 2024. One of them was a straight self-defense case, which
mm,
by its nature, you are admitting that your client killed somebody, but that it was legally justified. Second case involved a sort of convoluted co-defendant system, co-defendant type of fact pattern, where my
mm,
client was never alleged to have actually killed anybody, but was alleged to have been in the part of the scheme. You can look at both of those and realize that yeah, if you just treat them like they are charged with murder, there's no way you can actually effectively defend them. But also,
mm,
you're missing the point because it turns out a jury agreed with us on the self-defense case that it was justified.
mm,
And a jury agreed with us that my client was not anywhere near as involved in this scheme as the government believed.
mm,
There's no way that those people can go home if you don't actually believe more than just they are charged with murder. And that's not something for everybody. I mean, that is not something I don't think everybody is comfortable with. There are plenty of really good felony high-end defense attorneys who don't do sex cases because they
mm,
just they've and I've to talk to folks and they're like, it just I did them for a while, I just can't do it anymore because it just actually is. They know that about themselves. I cannot see this person as anything more than a pedophile. We are currently okay with that.
mm,
We have a number of sex cases. We've got a number of, child pornography cases. And I could go on and on about like why child pornography cases are, arguably like the worst use of criminal justice resources. And
mm,
people would say that I must be a pedophile myself. A lot of these people are sick. I mean, it is partially an illness, and judges are coming around to it. You'll see it's not uncommon nowadays in those certain circumstances to see judges on child porn cases giving no jail because somebody, ends up down the rabbit hole of child porn.
mm,
That doesn't mean it's not a crime. It doesn't mean it's not awful, but inevitably, a lot of these people they're not awful people. They are sick
mm,
people. That's all part and parcel of how you approach the job and how you approach, sort of your clients. Like I said, I firmly believe our system absolutely needs people to do that.
mm.
Otherwise, we might as well just go back to the colonial era and just
The
have the cavemen.
Inquisition. They got the job done.
Yeah.
Are there still going to be courthouses in the future, or is it all going to be online? I mean, the people still, I know there'll be, I guess, jails in the future, but will it be everything online and the computer sorted out?
No, I mean, I think it's funny because you've probably been around some of the courthouses in Virginia other than
Oh
Fairfax.
yeah.
So, I go to Fauquier a lot these days.
Mhm.
And there's two interesting things about Fauquier, which is, for the listeners, it's a rural-ish county. I guess we would now call it ex-urban,
Right.
about an hour west of Washington. But they still have their old 17 and 1800s courthouses. So the
Mhm.
general district court, misdemeanor court, was the old circuit court. And you go in up these big stairs, and you go in, and it's shaped like an oval.
Mhm.
And it's got the little balcony overlooking, and it's got these really small wooden pew benches. I mean, these are
Yeah.
original, and like they are not built for, anyone over 200 pounds.
Mhm.
And then when you're looking, the judge sits right here. Everybody sits like right on top. So the judge is about 5 feet away from the prosecutor, the defense attorney, and the defendant. And then over in the corner is a seating for 15 or so chairs. That
Yeah.
was where the jury used to sit. And so when you go in there, and you can imagine, I mean, this was where they had murder trials. This was,
Mhm.
hey, y'all, there's a big trial going on in town. Let's all go
Right.
downtown. Let's go take a look. So now their circuit court, which I think is built later, but it's like a pit. So you walk in, you go down these stairs, and up top are the gallery where people can sit. It's a pit. The attorneys, the judge, everyone is down in this pit. I mean, like that is what a courthouse used to be. That's where oh, did you hear this farmer and that farmer are having a land dispute? They're going to have it out at the courthouse today. Like that is a
Mhm.
fundamental part of, I think, America. If you go down to Culpeper, they also have kind of their old-timey courthouse. It's cute.
Right.
The witness sits like where I am, and the attorneys are on the side, and the jury sits in front of the judge. Very
Yeah.
strange. So like you're asking questions of the witness over here, but the jury's here. But this is sort of, so to answer your question, of course, there will always be courthouses because it's really, I mean, that is probably the most quintessential American thing that has not changed in 250 plus years is we have courthouses and you can go down to the courthouse. Everyone can go down to the
Mhm.
courthouse. In Virginia, we still have the stupid magistrate system where if you got a problem with your neighbor, go down to the
Right.
magistrate's office and swear out a warrant. So they're not going to anywhere.
It's a place to get justice. Like you go to a grocery store to get food, you go to this big building to get justice, and it should look like a courthouse, and things inside should act like a courthouse. When you leave, you've got it. You've
Yep.
seen it. It's happened. It's an event. I don't want to say it's a like a sports stadium, but in a way, it's you go there, you watch it, the event, and then it's over.
Right.
And so that has
What
its
are the
value too.
constitutional
Mhm.
offices in Virginia? Local constitutional office, clerk of the court, right? Clerk of the court has been around for 200 plus years. Everything
Mhm.
that happens in a county, clerk of the court, Commonwealth's attorney. Commonwealth's
Mhm.
attorney is a constitutional office in Virginia. The sheriff. These are all, constitutional offices. This is why we formed a government was to have some order. And
Mhm.
as long as that's why we're all here, you're going to have a courthouse.
I just wonder how much of the technology is going to circle around it. Like electronic filing. Hey, that's great. We don't have to have all this paper and moving it around from point A to point B. Automatic interpreters. Do you need a human when an AI could do a better job? Open it up to 500 languages instead of the top 50. It'll be there. It'll be a place, but I don't know if it's going to be recognizable to us.
Right. Well, what'll be interesting is as things change and you still have trial by jury is going to always be an American. What's going to happen when you start having attorney 10, 15 years from now who have no real experience in jury trials,
Hmm.
in-person jury trial? Because that may be the only time they actually go to the courthouse, right?
Hmm.
You can do a motion to suppress in a criminal case over Zoom, right?
Right.
You can be the prosecutor, I can be the defense attorney, and Vicky can be the judge, and we'll bring in a witness and we can all do this. Judge will
Right.
say, I'm fine with a credibility determination over Zoom. We don't all need to come in. Well, what's going to happen to those attorneys who now, for the first time ever, are showed up in a courthouse to do a jury trial? That may be stuff you lose at some point.
Or will it split like they do in England,
Hmm.
where they have attorneys in the courthouse and attorneys, in the offices? So,
I've always loved that. And, that's historically the attorneys in the courthouse even really legally trained. Like the
Oh, no.
barristers were just, you were really good at talking. Here's your, right? Like that was the difference between a barrister and a solicitor. A solicitor went to school. A barrister was any schmuck off the street, but he's really good at arguing, so he's my barrister.
I was thinking,
That's why I always joke, and I love what I do, but I say, listen, what I do is not rocket science. Criminal law, you could teach a monkey to do it. That being said, a monkey's not going to be able to do it as well as I can.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And like I said, thank the audience for listening and appreciate it with Mr. Brandon Sloane. And I'm Randall Borden and signing off. Thank you.